Welcome to our weekly market review brought to you by ETM Analytics and TreasuryONE. I'm joined by TreasuryONE's currency strategist, André, Cilliers. Both of us sitting in a freezing Western Cape at the moment. But it is the week of 2024. Can I call it that? Because it feels like we've been waiting for this week for ages. And quite frankly, I want it to come and go as quickly as possible. The Americans will be heading to the polls this week to elect their 47th US president, Harris and Trump. The race is it's pretty tight. It's head on head. The different polls have divergent views. The betting markets have different views. So it is still a very unclear picture, which is making it a bit tricky because I want to remain outside of the circus, but both of these candidates have very divergent views when it comes to economic policy, fiscal policy, tax measures, for example, which obviously hold different implications for the US dollar going forward, right? And I know, André, you guys have been looking at, we have been trying to analyze which one will be better for the US, which one will be more bullish, which one will be more bearish. And it is tricky to pinpoint. And both of them, like I said, have different things playing into our analysis. But we could possibly see them actually just both ending up, at least in the medium to longer term, not being all too well for the US dollar.
Yes, I was listening to you now, and then you came up with a very nice name that's got a lovely ring to it, Harris and Trump. Maybe that should be the president,
Right.
Government of national unity. What can we expect? I don't think it's easy. If you look at the graph, it's the blue and the red crossed each other quite a few times. Now it's slightly above for Kamala, slightly below for Trump. I think it's very, very even. And I think to try and analyze what will be the outcome is foolish. I think we just have to wait for them to count the votes. The divergence in policy, the one builds walls and the other one taxes people, the rich people, and so forth. To me, let's look rather where does this economy stand? Where does, as a government, stand? They spend too much and they get too little. So who's addressing that issue? That issue is actually the only person that really addresses that issue is Kamala Harris, because she says we have to tax people to get more money. Donald Trump says we'll get that extra money by having trade wars, and then we'll have import tariffs. Well, that's not good for world economies. That's not good for international trade. I think my biggest problem with Donald Trump is potentially the cat amongst the pigeons. He doesn't think before he talks. He just talks. But we'll see what happens. It would have an impact going forward on the volatility of the markets. There could be short-term spikes. There could be short-term downward spirals of the value of the dollar. Nobody knows. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm going to wait for them to count the votes, and I'm going to see what we expect afterwards. And to me, the biggest threat about this election is the acceptance, especially by Donald Trump, should he be the loser of the election results, and whether there's any court cases that get started because he's lost. That to me is a big threat to what could happen with the value of the dollar going forward. That's the worrisome thing that could come out of this election. We know that in the 2020 elections, he doubted the election results and he made a big discussion about that, and that filtered right through to the 2024 campaigning. So what happens afterwards if he does not make it? And what does the Kamala Harris side do? Will they accept the result, or will they challenge the result? So that to me is the biggest danger here.
I've also stated before that we should not negate the risk of potential, conflict of some sorts happening when either side wins or loses. I see, in fact, some of the Washington, D.C. Organizations have already boarded up. You know how you board up in preparation of a protest? They've already started with that. So definitely a lot to look forward to, and to look out for at least. And while we wait for the voting to unfold and for the winner to be announced, of course, the Fed will make its latest decision known on Thursday as well. They've got something interesting to consider, and that was last week's non-farm payrolls, which blew everyone a bit out of the water with coming in at 12,000K. Which is something, was that because of the hurricanes? Is there something else that played into it? It's something the Fed will likely consider along with the volatility of this elections going forward. But pretty much, I think the market is priced in a 25% basis cut coming in from Powell, right? There's not going to be any surprises to that.
No, and last week's figure on the non-farm payrolls was one figure. If you look at from the last meeting to this meeting, that was the only wild card figure that came out. The rest of the figures said inflation is gradually coming down. It said jobs data looks reasonably okay. It's not totally negative and it's not totally positive, and the pressure on wages is not over or under, it's fairly neutral. So I don't think one should look at just Friday's figure. And I think 25 basis points is the one that's priced in for this week. And I think that's the one that we're going to see. And that's it. No, honestly, I don't think big surprises there.
When I saw the 12,000K figure, I actually for a moment considered that they made a typo in that data coming out. But between all the market volatility, what's going on in the Middle East, nothing much really domestically big in South Africa. But what can we expect from the Rand?
What can we expect from the Rand? I think 17, 18 is the trading range. I think it stays within that trading range. The question would be on the volatility of the election is, do we jump towards the bottom end of the range, or do we jump towards the upper side of the range, and do we briefly break out of that? There is a chance, especially if there's court cases on the election and so forth, that there could be a bit of a safe haven flight into the dollar, and that could potentially hit the 18 levels and slightly above, but it would very quickly subside back into the range. I don't think we're about to break out of the 17, 18 range, but there could be some volatility in this week. More volatility to be expected most probably later in the month, when it's for us to decide what we do with interest rates and how do our monetary policy deals with a 3.8% inflation rate versus a midpoint of 4.5, but that we'll discuss later during the month.
Okay, André, so hopefully, who knows, we might know the 47th president's name by next week, Monday, when we chat again. Until then, I hope you have a good week.
I think we'll know the name of the president. Whether the president will be inaugurated in January, that remains to be seen.
Okay, André, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you.